I would like to introduce Diane Sayer, guys. Diane is from New York. She ran for Senate, United States Senate. And of course, I ran for United States Congress for the House of the United States in 2020. So I ran on Republican ticket. Diane ran on independent ticket in 2022, correct, Diane?
Yes, exactly.
And I
Against
ran
Chuck
in
Schumer.
2020. And I think that the interesting part about us getting together today for this live show is that we both agree that we're on the brink of nuclear war.
Yep. That's not a happy thing to agree about, I must say. I wish we
Exactly.
were
And we
agreeing
both
on.
agree that our taxpayer dollars should not be financing the deaths of Ukrainian people, while Biden and our Congress assures us that we're trying to save Ukraine. Nothing could be further from the truth. And the escalation with Russia that could lead potentially to thermal nuclear war is not something that we would like as American citizens to see, correct, Diane?
Absolutely. And I appreciate your speaking out on this because you have some Ukrainian heritage in your background and therefore have tremendous authority on this point. And I will say it also takes a certain amount of courage. I was reading an interview with the leader, Victor Medchuk. I don't know if you know his name, the For
Yes,
Life
Viktor
Party.
Medvedchuk, the
Medvedchuk.
Ukrainian opposition leader.
Yes, he's now in Russia, and he said actually there's a large number of Ukrainians who have had it with this fascist dictatorship of Zelensky and his Azov cohorts who are just doing the bidding of British intelligence and the CIA. I mean, they're not even their own government, but he said, of course, if you're inside Ukraine, you are taking an enormous risk if you speak out against this regime, as we have seen. We saw it in Bucha, and we see it now against the Ukrainian Orthodox priests. And now NATO is having their dream of what they tried in World War II to get a war between Germany and Russia to destroy both countries. That's why Montague Norman of the Bank of England and Prescott Bush both funded Adolf Hitler and the Nazis, that they wanted to ensure that you would not have a German-Russian partnership. So if you look at what's happening today by persuading the Germans to send tanks, and how did we do it? We said, well, we'll send tanks, excepting our tanks aren't going to arrive for 1 year. So we're not really sending tanks. I mean, at this rate, the war will be over by the time any American tanks would be sent, but Germany will be putting itself in the awkward position. And here we are on Holocaust Remembrance Day, and we have the specter of Germany sending tanks to a pro-Nazi regime, the ideologues of Stepan Bandera, to have a war with Russia. And I can't imagine that even everyone in Germany is so sanguine about this. In fact, I know many of them are not. And I know there were demonstrations actually against this. And of course, I work closely with the German leader, Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who is very well known internationally. And she thinks that her government is out of its mind, especially their foreign minister, Annalena Baerbock, who told the
Oh, yeah.
Europeans, yeah, we are at war with Russia.
At
We're
war
not
with
at war.
Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe you heard the president of Croatia said, well, maybe you're at war with Russia. That's not my idea. And he said, I hope it goes better for you than it did 70 years ago.
Exactly. Exactly. In one of my lives, I played the one of the opposition leaders in Germany and Bundestag. He gave a speech and he said, basically, this is insane. He said, are you trying to send tanks to burn in the Russian land and Ukrainian land again? Because your grandfathers tried it, and Napoleon tried it, and then the Bandera followers tried it a while back during the Second World War, and Hitler tried it. And you remember the history lessons, what happened, he said. And I know that you correctly mentioned Annalena Baerbock, that what is it, foreign minister
Yeah,
of Germany, came out and blatantly said that we shouldn't, Europeans, we quote unquote, shouldn't fight each other because we're at war with Russia. I'm thinking, what? Are you out of your mind, people? You want to fight nuclear nation of 140 million? And just like Diane, you said, you don't remember how it went the last time you tried that?
right.
Uh,
Exactly. And I think we're seeing here, as a child, I was brought up in a Quaker household, a pacifist household. And one of the things that used to really bother me is trying to understand how Hitler could have come to power and how nobody would have stopped him and why didn't anyone do anything. Well, we're seeing this right now. And we're seeing this actually um, in the United States. I want to tell you a story about this rally coming up, if you don't mind, on
sure, go
February.
ahead. What rally?
Well, on February 19th, the Libertarian Party of the United States and the People's Party of the United States, which are two very different parties. Libertarian, people think of laissez-faire, Ayn Rand, uh, it tends, people might say conservative, although I don't think they're really conservative. And then the People's Party is sort of more socialistic, universal health care, green, the environment, all of this stuff. These two very different parties decided to come together to organize a rally against nuclear war.
So no Republicans. I ran on Republican ticket. I'm waiting to hear when you're going to say Republicans are there too, but sounds like they're not there
Well,
organizing it.
I don't know if their party will be there officially, although you certainly have some Republicans like Congressman Paul Gosar, who put out an
Yes, in Arizona. Yeah.
excellent release against the tanks. Now, so they've invited about 15 people to speak, including myself, including Scott Ritter, including Jimmy Dore, Garland Nixon, many people who your listeners probably know. And now these speakers are getting pressure. I just saw an article by David Swanson, who's a longtime anti war activist. He's one of the speakers. And apparently, his friends in the Democratic Party are pressing him to withdraw and not speak there.
Wow.
And he wrote an article called "How Dare I Oppose War Together with Libertarians?" And he said, I realize, he said, I'm getting a lot more criticism for planning to speak at an anti war rally at which libertarians will speak than I do for sitting around doing nothing. In fact, I get no criticism ever for sitting around doing nothing, even though that's far more dangerous. And then he goes on to say, which I think is really fun. He said, but why would I team up with or even be seen with people who oppose war because it costs money? We're talking about mass murder, massive environmental destruction, the risking of nuclear apocalypse. Isn't it embarrassingly comical to oppose it because it costs money? And he says, well, I guess, but I'd oppose war with people who opposed it because it starts with W. If a crowd of people who hated war and water and walruses and Wisconsin invited me to speak against war at an event that was exclusively against war, I would show up and speak with perhaps a nice water bottle and my Wisconsin Badgers shirt on, because the point would be the widespread coalition. In other words, this is the game. This is the game. Divide and rule. We've seen it. I don't see how people can't get it. We had it through the entirety of the Trump administration to an extreme degree, so that now people practically have nervous breakdowns if they're talking to someone and they discover they disagree on something.
Yeah. And Diane, do you remember how I believe there was Congress, men and women in United States Congress who wrote a letter to Biden, supposedly asking him to consider peace while actually supporting Biden's policy, which we know United States and Great Britain and everybody else is basically uh, withholding the negotiations process with Russia, and instructs Zelensky, who is obviously a puppet of United States and Great Britain and who knows who else, from negotiating with Russia and sitting down at the peace table. So those 30 congressmen and women wrote a letter and they withdrew it the next day, where there
Exactly.
was a feeble and weak attempt, but at least the words, let's try to explore peace diplomatic solution with Russia, even though we commend you, Mr. Biden, for your great effort in diplomatic solutions with Russia, which he has zero.
Right.
Zero diplomatic solutions. In fact, Victoria Nuland came out the other day and she said something about Russia is a criminal, Putin is criminal, and we have the only way that we will lift the sanctions from Russia is that Russia gives back all the territories. Well, today the Russian Peskov, I think he's the spokesman for Kremlin, came out and said that the words of Mrs. Newland appear that United States and the West and NATO is totally not serious about any type of negotiation because it doesn't allow for any room for negotiation. It's basically an ultimatum. You want your sanctions withdrawn, you withdraw your troops and give back all the territories to Ukraine. And of course, we know Russia already incorporated some of these newly quote unquote controlled areas via their constitution into Russia. So the West pretends to want to seek diplomatic solution where instead it spews out ultimatums totally unacceptable to Russia just to prolong this war. Zelensky signed the decree with himself where he forbade himself to negotiate with Putin and said that it's forbidden to negotiate peace with President Putin. And he commented that he will negotiate with Russian president, but it will be a different president of Russia, not Putin. So we're the stalemate where the West and Ukraine do not wish to negotiate. In the meantime, Russia is standing there. It's like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's do peace. And nobody's willing. The weapons are flowing. American taxpayer dollars in billions and billions, another week, another billion, while our own people are sleeping in the streets in California and throughout United States. I traveled, I see the poverty level that we have. I live next to the community that have been impoverished for at least over 20 years that I'm in the United States, and nothing is changing. And we're sending all this money to Ukraine to keep fueling the war that kills more Ukrainian people while we're told we're saving Ukraine and robbing our own citizens. The money that could help to increase the standard of living of our own American citizens are flowing abroad in this grand laundromat that Ukraine has become for corrupt politicians of Ukraine and United States and other countries, as we know, who are involved in trying to perpetuate this war. What do you think, Diane?
No, that's very accurate, and I'm really glad you bring up the plight of the Ukrainian people because they're losing their soldiers at a totally alarming rate. It was my understanding that when the Russian special military operation began, men between the ages of 16 and 60 were forbidden to leave. They're being conscripted. So they're having soldiers who are less and less well trained because so many have already been killed. And they're in a hideous meat grinder. And the longer this goes on, the more of them will die. Plus, now Russia has been targeting the infrastructure, which is not a war crime. That is simply what goes on in a war. These are legitimate targets. You want to stop the ability of communication. You want to stop. So you have people with no electricity, no heat, under terror, and terror from their own regime and terror from the war, which could be ended right away. I think there's an additional problem, however, now, because as you know, it's come out that the entire Minsk Accord process was a complete fraud. So
Absolutely.
Russia has a legitimate point when they say we have no one to negotiate with, because Angela Merkel, Francois Hollande, and now yesterday even Boris Johnson admitted, oh yeah, nobody intended for the Minsk Accord to work. We were just using it to buy time to train 27,000, 40, however many Ukrainian troops to have war with Russia. So if you're Vladimir Putin and you're looking at this, you say, why should I trust any negotiation ever again? You lied to us when we very generously allowed Germany to be reunified. I mean, if you had lost 27 million people, as the Soviet Union did, to the Nazis, and then said, okay, Germany can be reunified, and James Baker III promised NATO would not move 1 inch.
1 inch eastward.
And we lied. NATO expanded 5 times.
You're absolutely correct, Diane. Diane, let me play a little video of you.
Okay.
So our listeners and everybody who watches us on YouTube and on Facebook can see Diane's activism in speaking about the war in Ukraine and how United States, which is very unfortunate, now supports this Nazi ideology. This is rampant in Ukraine. And Azov Battalion, which is known for association with their neo-Nazi ideology, and United States Congress actually had, I believe, a resolution condemning the money and prohibiting money goes to go to Azov Battalion in Ukraine. But now that Azov Battalion is official part of Ukraine's military forces, they are receiving the funding. But here's a little video of Diane. Let us all watch this, speaking out on the subject of the ideology that unfortunately United States Congress, a Biden administration, and apparently a lot of people who do not understand what happens in Ukraine, are pretty much supporting blindly. Listen to Diane here.
You have a government which refuses to condemn Nazi atrocities committed by the Azov Battalion in Ukraine, but not only refuses to condemn them, but funnels them $40 billion worth of aid and weapons. When you have leaders of our elected government, that is members of the House and Senate like Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, going over to meet with President Zelensky of Ukraine and supporting the narrative, which is full of lies, when it is the Nazis committing the war crimes and the atrocities, not the Russians.
Isn't it well said, Diane?
Thank you. You know where I was in that video, probably, but
Where?
the viewers in Buffalo.
Buffalo, yes.
Because
yes.
they had just had that mass shooting. And
Mass
I said,
shooting.
you say, how do we get Nazi shooters in the US? And I said, that's a stupid question. We're sending billions of dollars to Nazis in Ukraine. Why would you expect you wouldn't have a Nazi in the, and he was wearing the man who shot the 10 African Americans at the grocery store in Buffalo while I was in Buffalo at the time. He had that black sun. He had a Nazi symbol used by the Azov Battalion.
Azov Battalion has
Exactly.
same symbol, and they have this the lightning bolts that are grouped together, the SS type insignias all over their uniform. And Zelensky comes on the 9th of May, the day where most of the people of the former Soviet Union celebrate victory over Hitler, and post on his official page of Ukrainian president a photo of himself, and on the backdrop there is the soldier wearing the chevron on his uniform with a Totenkopf, which is this German insignia for concentration camp military units during Hitler time. So it's all over. People just don't see it. And the lies that we've been told about this war. I was going to ask you, Diane, do you find it peculiar that Biden comes out and says how he feels for Ukrainian children, while completely ignoring that United States has staged the coup together with EU in 2014 in Ukraine, that removed legally elected president there in Ukraine. And then Ukraine started to bomb its own people in eastern region, the Donbass region, the Donetsk and Lugansk provinces. For the last 9 years and counting, Ukraine is shelling its own people. Talk about the lies we have been told. And so when Biden comes out and says, this is all Russia's fault, that Russia is the aggressor, and Russia says, wait a minute, we came to save those people from Ukraine. Ukraine was genociding them for the last almost 9 years to this day and counting. And of course, these people of Eastern Ukraine who've been consistently shelled and bombed against every international law and convention. You cannot bomb your own citizens and civilians. But that's what Ukraine was engaged in for the last 9 years and counting. And now, of course, those regions voted to join Russian Federation after the referendums. And this year, Biden again comes out and says that Russia is aggressor, Ukraine is the state, and the whole 9-year period of Ukraine murdering its own citizens in eastern Ukraine is missing from the narrative.
Right, exactly. Now, I don't know that it's particularly odd. I mean, one, Biden seems to be exhibiting signs of dementia, so I'm not sure if he knows what he's saying all the time. He's also very mean-spirited. When he's not being forgetful, he's quite a mean-spirited person, and he should know what's happening in Ukraine because he was in charge of the Obama administration's operations in Ukraine when the United States overthrew the elected government and brought these banderists into power. And then, of course, we have Hunter Biden, the laptop, the bioweapons laboratories, everything that's sordid and dirty, as corrupt as you can imagine, that he would be involved in.
And Diane, remember how you said in the beginning that you always wondered how that the people of the world allowed the Nazism to flourish way back when during World War II. I had exactly the same question when I was growing up. I thought, how did nobody stop this? How was it even allowed to go on while other people in other countries, went about their day, had dinner, had a drink?
Mhm.
But now we know that it has been reversed in Ukraine, of all places, this Nazi ideology of superiority of one group of people over other people, that in Ukraine now there is this rampant Russophobia, Russian language is banned, all the opposition parties that Zelensky dubbed pro-Russian are banned. Now he is waging the war on Russian Orthodox Church. The priests are thrown outside the churches. Their property is nationalized. The church is occupied by armed men, and the priests are standing outside begging for their right to return to their worship. And that's the modern day Ukraine. So when I see this, I'm thinking, now I understand how Nazism happened during Hitler time. There is still people in United States and across the world who go about their day having dinner. They don't pay any attention to what is happening, to what is Ukraine doing to its own citizens for the 9 years. I spoke out about it. So I wrote letters to my senators, to my representatives about all the atrocities of what's happening in Ukraine in the last 9 years. Nobody pays attention. They sent you this formalized letter with the standard response. It's all Putin's fault. So that's how this happened. And now I got my answer. I know exactly how things happened during Hitler time, because the media right now is suppressing any alternative opinion or any factual opinion, because we know the facts about the situation in Ukraine. And if somebody speaks the facts, they're banned on Twitter, they're removed on Facebook, their YouTube channels are deleted. So the media and the government is suppressing all the truth, keeps lying to us. And I got my answer. And of course, somebody does speak out. They either labeled Russian propagandists and put on the hit blacklist and kill list that you're going to tell us about in a minute.
Mhm.
And Rand Paul, even the sitting United States senator, is placed on the Ukrainian hit list and labeled Russian propagandists for requesting that American money to Ukraine would have a provision to find out where the money is going, requesting accountability. and then placed on the blacklist and kill list that Ukraine has, that I know your name has appeared on that list and you've spoken about that. So I now got my answer. I understand how the Holocaust happened, how the World War II happened. We're reliving the events, and pretty much the same recipe is at work. And people better wake up. My message to Americans and people around the world: wake up, research the truth, find the truth, speak it out, write to your representatives. We have people who have been silenced for speaking the truth. Tell us, Diane, how did you find yourself on the Ukrainian blacklist, hit list, and what kind of list is it?
Well, there's a couple of lists. I'm on the list called the Center for Countering Disinformation. And the last time I checked, actually, they may have temporarily removed my name. They keep changing the names of who's on it. And maybe because I confronted Senator Gillibrand here in New York about my name being on the list and my fear of, I got a package the other day that had a return address that said something about Ukraine, and it rattled. And I know I'm on this list. So I said to my treasurer who got the mail, I said, do not open that. He knows I'm on the hit list, so he wouldn't bring the package into the office. I said, maybe we should call the police. So here I am, afraid to open my mail. I got a gift from someone that had a return address in Turkey because they had ordered something which came from Turkey, but I didn't know it. I almost put the thing in the bathtub. So you're living kind of in fear, noticing that you're looking everywhere to see if there's an odd person standing there, if your car has been tampered with, because people have been blown up. And here I am in the United States, and my own elected representatives, in this case Schumer and Gillibrand in the Senate, both voted for this funding, which is being used to put my life in danger, frankly, and Scott Ritter. Now, the Center for Countering Disinformation list, when it first appeared last July, the first 31 people on the list had spoken at a conference of the Schiller Institute. And they don't all agree with each other. Helga Zepp-LaRouche founded the Institute. She convened it because she wants to sponsor a dialogue. How do we get out of this war? People came with very different ideas. They didn't all agree. The next thing you know, 31 of them are on this list, including a farmer from Kansas who was talking about food shortages. I mean, he's a Russian propagandist. Really crazy. That list was then used as a feeder for an extremely ominous list called Mirotvorets. You may fix my pronunciation. But this list has the photograph, the name, the date of birth, and then all kinds of personal information, your address, where you like to hang out. This list, and then after they assassinate you, as Daria Dugina, who was on the list, they put in red across your face, liquidated. And there have been several people on that list assassinated, and their website shows them with liquidated through their face. They have, I believe, 327 children under the age of 18, like this young lady in the Donbass who I think may be 50.
I think Faina.
Yes,
Yeah.
Faina Sevenkova. Yeah,
Sevenkova,
she's
yeah.
maybe 14 or 15 years old now. She's been talking about living in a war zone since she was 12 or 13. They are setting her up to be killed. And again, as you said, that's what I'm seeing. This is how Nazi Germany happened.
And the Americans better everybody wake up. And the presentation that I watched, the Senator Richard Black, former Virginia state senator, actually explained that presentation that you mentioned, where you guys all got together and talked about the black and hit list that Ukrainian government runs, at least one of them, and another one is also prominently displayed. Not sure if that was privately funded or not. But basically, when you guys talked, Senator Black said that United States sponsors the Center for Countering Misinformation of Ukraine with our taxpayer dollars. And
Exactly.
then they place Americans on the hit list to be killed. What?
Right.
And our senators and our congressmen are supporting that? Let me play the little video when you were confronting Chuck Schumer.
Okay.
Let everybody watch how brave Diane was, that she actually did come to one of the events, I believe, and said to Chuck Schumer that it's enough, and the war in Ukraine has to stop, and he's not doing a great job other than killing Ukrainian people. This is Diane here.
You are right when you said you're a killer. We have this disaster in Afghanistan, which is a result. I have a speech. I'm running for Senate against you because of your policies. Because after 9/11, you voted to invade. We are doing a political thing. We killed 1 million people in Iraq. My sister was in Iraq. No, he is a killer. This is a terrible question.
Diane, what do you have to say about being brave and trying to disseminate truth at the political event of the best liars in the world?
Well, I just had another exchange with him. Did you see it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you have to see it. I shelled out a lot of money for a very expensive breakfast because I knew he was going to be there, and I had to pay for 3 people to go, one for security, one to film. And I ordered online because you could hear it was noisy, so everyone in the room couldn't hear what I was saying. But I looked online to find if they have small bullhorns that you can fit in your purse. So I ordered a blue plastic bullhorn from Amazon and got it in my bag. And I so when he began his speech, I whipped out my bullhorn and said, "Good morning." And the whole crowd turned around and I said, "We're on the brink of nuclear war because you are sending $100 billion to Ukraine." And then Schumer said, "She ran against me on the Lyndon LaRouche line, trying to think that would make me ridiculed." But the sense I had in the room was that actually everyone there was quite interested in what I had to say. I went through the kill list. I said, you know, myself and Scott Ritter are both New York residents. And in other words, we're your constituents and we're both in danger because of this list you're funding, and you wouldn't even meet with us. I was able to get out quite a bit. My colleague who did the filming told me the man at one of her tables was quite delighted. He said, "Oh, this is a lively way to start our breakfast."
Diane, look at you, which reminds me, there are people who are on this Ukrainian kill list, like Diane said, they are children, but there is also Pope of Rome, Pope Francis is being targeted by Miratorious, by Ukrainian kill in his list. Scott Ritter, we know Scott. Colonel Douglas McGregor, he served as the I believe is a senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense during Trump administration in 2020. So Colonel McGregor is on the black kill hit list, however you want to call it, by Ukrainians. And labeled, all these people labeled as Russian propagandists. Sitting Senator Rand Paul, Tulsi Gabbard, you see, and Tulsi
Right.
got on the list when she was with Democratic Party, and Rand Paul is with Republican Party. So you see, there are no party lines. These people target anyone and everyone who speaks the truth about the situation in Ukraine, about the war in Ukraine, about Biden dealings in Ukraine, about Zelensky's dealings, and how he basically turned Ukraine from what Pelosi tries to sell us as quote unquote democracy into tyranny. That country has no free speech. They have martial law. He outlawed and banned all the opposition parties, put in jail opposition leaders. Now he is prosecuting priests. He recently took away citizenship from 13 priests and clergy. They nationalized Russian Orthodox Church patriarchy churches and threw the priests outside in the streets to worship in the street while the armed men took over their churches. This is insane. And we have been told that we're saving Ukraine, and Ukraine is this plucky, quote unquote, democracy that needs our support. We're supporting human rights violation. Those people tie their own citizens to the lamppost. Did you see that,
Right.
Diane? And
Yes.
take the underwear down
Yes.
and beat the people, strangers, humiliate and beat people with no due process, tying and make them totally motionless next to the lamppost. Daily Beast wrote about it, of all places, finally.
Right.
And that's what Ukraine is doing to its own citizens. And we are supposed to be supporting democracy that Pelosi tells us in Ukraine. This is insane, people. Wake up. I'm glad Diane is speaking about it. I'm speaking about it. I've been speaking about it for years because I am originally from Ukraine. So I'm fluent in Ukrainian and Russian. I know what was going on there for years, and I wrote about it. I spoke about it. I would be happy if anybody wants to have me speak on their show. I'll come and tell you a few things. But I am so thrilled to at least see a handful of people like Diane Sayer, myself, Scott Reeder, Colonel Douglas McGregor. We now have Jimmy Dore. I've seen some of his shows. Then there is Aaron Mati, I believe, with Grain Zone. He speaks about, I think Jackson Hinkle speaks about it. Just about it. Tulsi Gabbard said a few words about it on, I believe, Joe Rogan's show. But that's it, guys. You can count on two hands the people who speak against this insane war in Ukraine that is edging us closer to the nuclear war with Russia. And nobody seems to be worried other than 10 of us, right, Diane?
There's what?
I said nobody seems to be worried other than 10 of us.
Well, I think people are very worried, but it's the fear, and we have to get through the fear. And also in the United States, it's very hard because the media is so bad, but also because people are so sheltered from what's happening in the rest of the world. People don't know that the foreign minister of South Africa basically gave Tony Blinken the middle finger politically when he went to South Africa and told them they weren't allowed to work with Russia. And they said, you don't come here and tell us who we can work with. And you're getting this all over the world. You know, China and Nigeria just completed this massive deep water port. So countries are saying, if we work with China, if we work with Russia, Russia's building a nuclear power plant complex in Egypt. And so they say, well, we can work with the US and have them stick their finger in our eye, starve our children, put us under sanctions. That's really great. Or we can work with China and Russia, and we can get nuclear power plants and deep water ports and new subway stations and get people out of poverty. I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer. So the irony is Biden is here, oh, we are isolating Russia. No, Russia is not isolated. We are isolated. People are wondering, what the heck is the matter with you people in the United States? Do you really support this? And that's why I think this February 19th rally is so very, very important in Washington, D.C., and it's already coming under massive attack. I can see there's some very bizarre slanders against me right now going around. They want to knock me off the speakers list. They want to rip apart the coalition, and they'll target whatever they think is the most juicy, but it's really not it's everybody. It's an equal opportunity targeting. Again, they want to pit people against each other who should be working together and who naturally would be working together, because whose interest is a nuclear war?
Nobody's. And you rightly so said that they're trying to sanction Russia. Russia has been doing better than it has. And recently, Viktor Orban, the Hungarian president, came out and said that now they're pressuring him to stop any type of cooperation with Russia regarding nuclear energy. Like you mentioned that Russia is building a nuclear plant in Egypt. I believe they're building one in Turkey as well. And now Orban, I think they wanted to do some upgrades in Hungary. And now the apparently Biden administration and EU got together and pressuring Hungary to stop nuclear, a peaceful power plant, nuclear cooperation with Russia. I mean, I'm thinking about these countries in the EU. I'm thinking, you really are our vassal state. You're not independent state. And Ukraine is not independent. If people think Ukrainians are dying for their independence, they need to watch the movie Ukrainian Lives Matter on YouTube. And that movie was made by Ukrainian investigative journalists, which actually talks about external governing of Ukraine.
Mm.
That's basically the truth of it. And if anybody wants and fights for Ukraine's independence, it's pretty much people who speak the truth about it.
Right,
And
exactly. And it's
anybody who cares about Ukrainian people's lives are the people who actually speak out for the peace talks and negotiations with Russia, and not for continuation and fueling of this war that can bring us to the thermonuclear conflict. Diane, you've been in New York. Have you watched that little video that New York City put out, what to do in case of nuclear war and nuclear strike?
yes,
Did
I
you follow all the instructions in that 90-second video? Let's rehearse. How did you practice it?
yeah, there's a very well-dressed lady standing outside of her lovely brownstone brick house telling you, don't ask how it's happened, but it's happened. The big one, a nuclear bomb has struck. Of course, everyone would be standing outside their brownstone if a nuclear bomb had struck. And she said, I'm going to tell you how to survive. First thing you've got to do is get inside. All right, everyone. So if a nuclear bomb goes off, get inside. And then she says, don't hang out in your car. And listen to the radio, like the radio station is going to exist.
Are you thrilled with that your taxpayer dollar went to this very profound instruction that begins with the word go to your home? I'm thinking emphasis on the word go. Nobody's going to be going anywhere
Right.
when the big one hits. God forbid. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, no. And you wonder why they're doing it. I think part of it is perhaps a danger. Here's my conspiracy theorist coming out. I say, well, are they planning a false flag? Like, would they detonate something, not a nuclear bomb, because no one would survive, but suppose they blew up something in the city and they said the Russians did it, right? And then you are off to the races because we have to retaliate in the way that they used 9/11, right? Which anyone thinking knows that some guy with kidney failure, namely Osama bin Laden, who had terrible kidney failure, he was treated in the American hospital in Saudi Arabia or Dubai or somewhere for kidney failure like 2 years before 9/11. So you've got some old guy suffering from kidney failure sitting in a cave who's going to orchestrate the hijacking of all of these airplanes, take down our air defense. It doesn't make any sense. And then somehow this event, which kills 3,000 Americans on the ground, is used to do what? To say we have to have a dictatorship or the terrorists will win. You have to have a nudie search at the airport. Someone's going to look inside your shoes and your underwear and everything else to see if you're going to blow up the world. It's all crazy. Oh, when we have to spy on you and we have to get all your data and we have to know where you went and who you met with and what kind of.
Patriot Act, yes, and they keep extending it. You would think that this threat is sort of subsided, right? But they keep extending the Patriot Act.
Right. And then, of course, we have to bomb Iraq, which had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11. There was not even Al Qaeda in Iraq until after we overthrew and killed Saddam Hussein. Or, I mean, it's really so we've been living in a world of lies and it has to end. And I wonder how Russia would ever be able to trust us. And I think part of it has to do with cleaning house. We have to clean our own house here. We have to get a bunch of people out of these intelligence agencies. We have to expose releasing the Kennedy files. That would be a good way to clean up, because if we discover that our own intelligence agencies were involved in that assassination of our president, as we will discover, as I'm sure is in these documents, we might get somewhere in terms of getting our nation back.
Well, look at our intelligence agencies' FBI involvement with Twitter. The
Right.
Musk has released just a tip of the iceberg that the former FBI official was the legal counsel for Twitter. And before he was fired just now, recently by Elon Musk, apparently, deleted a lot of files that suggested a very cozy relationship between Democratic Party trying to suppress the stories about Hunter Biden and Biden during elections, Trump-Biden elections, and the FBI officials I employed at Twitter, or former rather FBI officials, and then they suppressed and banned and destroyed the accounts of people who did post the truth, and they wrapped it into this beautiful package called, oh, don't show the story, it's Russian propaganda. So we don't know the truth about pretty much anything, just like we don't know the truth about the Ukraine situation. I mean, you and I do, but people at large who only watch TV as their only point of reference, they don't know the truth about the Russia-Ukraine situation. They do not teach history in school anymore. Nobody knows where's Russia or Ukraine on the map. Did you see
Right.
that little video where people can't even point it on the map? And everybody's cheering for sending more billions. And if that brings us to nuclear war, they're all happy to go there. I mean, like, what? People, wake up. I'm just like sitting here thinking, how do you think, Diane, this is going to end? Because obviously the goal is not Ukraine, the goal is Russia. Biden speaks about regime change in Russia. They want, they dream to take Putin down. And of course, John Bolton came out and wrote an article that Putin must go. And of course, at his own time, Obama said that Gaddafi must go. And we know what happened to Libya leader Muammar Gaddafi, how he was murdered. So now they're getting up on Putin. What do you think? I mean, you think they're willing to take it to the edge just to get rid of Putin and replace him and change regime in Russia? Because we know that's the goal.
Well, I would say there's two goals, the destruction of Russia and the destruction of Germany. And then
Yeah,
overall, the destruction of China, because China has dared to get 800 million people out of poverty and disrupt the British and the big banks' intent to loot all these poor countries of raw materials and things like that. So I'm not sure how it will end. I'm actually, and I appreciate that quote from Revelations, that one, we have to really be careful thinkers, because a lot of what we're getting is smoke and mirrors and craziness. For example, the tanks. Well, it's very ugly, and it may wake a lot of people up, because it exposes, here you have the Germans supporting Nazism again against Russia, but they're not going to change the war. I mean, give me a break. 75, 89 tanks, 100 tanks is going to help. Russia has thousands of tanks. Russia is not out of troops. So it's not going to change the military configuration. Then, therefore, I don't think Russia would launch a nuclear bomb in response to some tanks. They're just going to knock out the tanks one by one. As you said, more and more Ukrainians are going to be killed. That's what's going to happen as a result of our aid. So I suspect that this coalition could be fracturing. I think that's why they're so terrified of the February 19th demonstration. You've got all these strikes in Europe. They had 1 million people in the streets in France, and there's another big national strike day on January 31st. You've got the Dutch farmers in the street. In New York City here, we had 7,000 nurses on strike. And about 2/3 of the world has gotten off the Titanic. They're not playing this game. They don't want to go along with it. I mean, even Taiwan voted overwhelmingly against the current prime minister, or whatever you want to call her, the leader of Taiwan, which is part of China, and we have to recognize that.
absolutely.
So they voted not to push independence. They're doing great. They do $100 billion worth a year of trade with China. Why would they want to have a war with them? And so Taiwan, I think, is looking at what's happening to Ukraine and saying, no, thank you. No, thank you. We don't want to go there. So now what does Biden do? He goes to try and cultivate a relationship with Japan, another fascist defeated regime, to get Japan to provoke China. and then say, we will defend Japan with nuclear weapons. If there's any nation that ought to be scared of nuclear weapons, it would be
It's
Japan.
Japan.
Right. I mean, so it is amazing. So I don't know. I think they're in a lot of trouble. I think that we could succeed in turning the corner, but I also think, as I know you do, I wouldn't count on anything because what we see is the insanity of these people seems to know no bottom. I have been astounded by the kind of idiotic, foolish, totally out of touch with reality actions that these people are taking. So I would never bet my life that we could count on them to come to their senses because I don't think they can.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking, Diane, that American people are watching this. They're thinking, what can we do? I mean, they always feel that we're rendered voiceless. We're rendered powerless. Politicians don't listen to us. They ignore our letters, our emails, our phone calls. They do what they do. And if this mushrooms to some type of nuclear exchange, or if Japan, again, becomes militarized and steps away from its pacifistic constitution, Japan actually worries me because at some point Japan used to be in charge of Taiwan or own Taiwan or something along these lines. And we know China has it on their list to reunify with Taiwan, I think by the year 27 now that they had this policy. Uh, the world is becoming more escalated. Japan now signed agreement with Great Britain to mutually exchange troops on each other's soil. Um, I don't know. I mean, our politicians are insane, and it's not exclusive to United States. I mean, for the exception of the few, like Paul Gosar, who speaks against this, and maybe Matt Gaetz, I think, on the Republican side spoke against it, and Thomas Massey spoke against it. Occasionally, Marjorie Taylor Greene spoke against it. So we have only a handful of us speaking about it, handful of politicians who stand up to it. I don't know. So help us God. What do you think, Diane? Who can help us to step away from this brain? To step away, what can we do?
Well, I think we have to tell the truth. I think what I did with Senator Schumer was good. I think lots of people should do. I don't think we should let congressmen get up in public and lie to us. I think Americans have to stop that. And if someone's telling you a lie, then jump out of your seat and yell at them. Or we just had a little encounter with AOC where I organized a chorus. We had 13 people who actually started singing, and that had that had a very good effect. I was actually trying to look for that video because I thought I could share it, but I'm having trouble finding it fast enough right now. But I'll send you the link because you know there if more people stand up, they won't be able to do it anymore. And also, I hate to say it, but it was actually comforting to me at this point because we think of the United States as so big and so powerful. The United States has only 4% of the population of the world. So if we believe so much in democracy, why do we think we have the right to dictate to 96% of the population that doesn't live here? And also, you see that it is the threat of nuclear weapons. It's just terror. Unfortunately, it's a real danger, but also I think we can do much more. I think Americans can do much more. I think they're ready. I think people have been very beaten down by the economic collapse, the cultural depravity, the isolation of the COVID lockdowns. There's been a whole series of things that have tried to leach out our spirit, but I don't think we're dead morally or culturally. And I think that's why the music plays such an important role also. We have to take those things that give us spiritual strength to tell the truth.
Yeah, I'm with you on music. I'm also a classically trained pianist. Do you play piano?
Very poorly.
Well,
Enough
I
to,
believe your vocation is you're the choir director. Is that correct?
yes, I direct choir and I'm a trombone player, really, so we could get
Wow,
together
I'm
and
impressed. We should do a duo sometime.
yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
I think, Diane, I will thank you for being with us. I know that you don't have infinite time,
Right.
but I would like to thank you for gracing us with your presence on this live. Everybody who is watching, I hope that you appreciated that Diane was with us today. And like Diane said, let's all start speaking the truth and start speak more of the truth. Let's tell the truth to our friends, neighbors. Let's share videos like this one. Let's post Facebook posts. Let's post YouTube, share links with your neighbors and friends. Tell them the truth about the events that surrounded us and how dangerous this situation with Ukraine and Russia and escalation is, and how dangerous Biden administration's policies are towards possibly inching us into the nuclear exchange or nuclear situation with Russia, or who knows, somebody else. But like Julian Assange said, if lies can start wars, the truth can end wars. Wouldn't you agree, Diane?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you for being with us. I will say that
Thank you.
we are having a great time, guys. And anybody who participated in this live, come back again, visit us, subscribe to the YouTube channel you're watching it on. And Diane Sayer, is my honor and privilege that we had our little chat today. Thank you very much for being here, Diane.
Thank you so much. See you soon.